this is Sam and Skylar. They work at Flat Branch. They're lenders here, and they're going to talk about, obviously, investing. That's why we're all here today. So thanks, everybody, for taking time, and to the folks online, we appreciate it. So think of questions throughout the process. They'll have time for questions at the end, and then hopefully this is helpful for everybody here. We're excited about it, and hopefully it's good information for you. So, okay.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having us. So I'm Skylar Wallace, Sam Hickey. We are lenders for Flat Branch Home Loans. Then on the side, we're both investors as well. So we'll talk a lot about things that we've done, what we do. But the real goal today is just talk a little bit about real estate. The thing we're focusing on today is residential real estate investing. So just to be clear, we're not talking anything commercial. We're not talking storage units, strip malls, any of that. It's strictly residential real estate is what we're going to focus on today. So we'll cover, the lingo, how investors talk, how, the key terms and things you need to know to kind of start getting into that world. We'll study the 8 most common strategies that investors use to get into real estate investing. We'll go into detail on those, and Sam will tell lots of stories of the goods and bads of all of that.
Hey, Peter, can I put you on mute, sir? There you go.
We'll talk about deals, how to find deals, how do you actually find houses to invest in, and then we'll talk about taking action as well. So to get started, there's a third member of our team, Andrew and Malcolm, as well. We've branded and are known as the Level Up Lenders. So our team is growing. Our office is over on 32nd Street in the same building as the medicine shop next to Arvest. So if you ever want to come over and talk about any of this in more detail, that's where we're located. So Sam's background, maybe I lost control.
All right.
It happens.
There we go. Perfect. So.
Hello, I'm Sam. I have a construction company now out of necessity. I didn't mean to start out as one, but I now have a construction company. I own 5X LLC, which is where I hold my property, and I'm a senior mortgage banker with Flat Branch Home Loans. I currently own about 32, well, that's probably wrong, but closer to 40 doors now, and I've done about a dozen flips in the process, and most of my education about this was diving into bigger pockets. I do follow Grant Cardone as sort of a mentality, growth-minded way of doing things, and then my main motivations for real estate investing are to retire early and work less, and to leave a legacy for my children.
So I'm Skylar, also at Flat Branch Home Loans. I'm a little different, so I self-manage properties. My family has rentals that I manage personally, and then I'm actually under contract. Well, I closed on my third, and I'm about to start my second BRRRR. I invest usually only in Seneca. I try, and the goal is to have no cash in any deals that I do. I don't have a construction company. I hire out everything, do a lot of project management myself, and I move a lot slower than Sam. So my family has a completely different strategy. They don't believe in debt. So we own 14 properties. We have no debt on any of them. It goes a little bit slower. It's a different strategy. So between us, there's a lot of different approaches and strategies to this game that we understand, just from the backgrounds that we've done. So depending on what your motivations are, what you're looking to do, we can give really good feedback from our experiences of what these things are like. I've also learned a lot from Bigger Pockets, Trevor Mock at carrot.com. Motivations are on here because real estate investing can be really fun, and it can be really rewarding, and it can also be a grind. It can be hard. There's times when, I have tenants calling me at 10 o'clock at night for who knows what's wrong. And so it's really important to know your motivation. I'm passionate about Seneca, so I buy dumpy houses in Seneca. I fix them up, try to make the neighborhoods look better. I like improving and enhancing my small community. So we'll talk more about the why. It's like I've lost control again. I don't know why that keeps happening.
Seems like when you
It's weird.
navigate away from that screen, maybe.
There it goes. So obviously Andrea's not here today, no worries. So why real estate investing? So Simon Sinek, if anybody's familiar, he talks about the golden circle. So what the golden circle is the three levels. There's the what, the how, and the why. So the what, what is it that you or your corporation or your business is going to do? The how is, how are you going to go about doing that? And the why, which is really the most important thing. So why do you want to go through the whole thing in the first place? It's the weirdest thing. So the what, I've already talked, it's very clear. We're going to talk about residential real estate investing. In terms of this is an investment vehicle. It's an investment strategy. We have lots of investment strategies. We have 401ks and we invest in gold and we do lots of things. This particular what today, like I talked about, is residential real estate investing. So the goal is to give you a lot of information to determine if this is a good investment vehicle to add to your portfolio. That's the what of what we're trying to do today. The how is reasonably easy, and there's a good chance you'll leave today with the how. We're going to talk about the 8 most common hows of how you get into it. All, from BRRRR to turnkey to new construction to flips to everything that there is to know. We'll talk about those. But the main thing that we can't tell you that you have to figure out yourself is the why. And there's all kinds of reasons why you want to get into this. You want to diversify, that's great. And retire early, like Sam, that's great. Get your money to work for you, get other people's money to work for you, tax benefits, passive income is huge, leave legacy for your kids. There's all kinds of reasons why you would want to do this, but it's really important to figure that out for yourself. We can't tell somebody why you want to do it. What I can tell you is that things will go wrong. There will be hardships, there will be things that you have to get past and work through and figure out. And so having a good solid why that you can always reflect back on, why am I driving over to figure out why the toilet is leaking all over my tenant's house at 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes it can be frustrating when you're dealing with that. So like I said, it's really important to figure that piece out. So the hope is that by the end, you'll understand if this is the right strategy for you to add to your portfolio, which specific way you want to go about doing that, and why you want to put yourself through all of it. Is really the goal of today. So we'll let Sam jump in.
Okay, let me first start by saying I've never driven to a tenant's house at 10 o'clock in the morning or evening or at any time. It's just not in my strategy, so I do other things. I let other people do that. So it's not a prerequisite that you sign up for being a landlord. There's plenty of companies out there that will do property management for you and make it more passive. It changes your trajectory on your dollars, but for me, I'm too busy to mess with that. And it's not something that's interesting to me to do, so I outsource those things. So anyways, big button. Okay. So some main terms, we're going to buzz through these really quickly, but essentially you'll hear this stuff come up on a regular basis once you get into this world. You're reading about it, you're online, you're forums, listening to podcasts, let's hope, reading books about it, whatever you're doing to educate yourself. Some of this stuff is going to come up and you're going to wonder what that means. And people will take you serious if you speak the lingo, if that makes sense. So first one's going to be the BRRRR. The BRRRR method is just a strategy of buying busted up house, fixing it up, getting it rented, then refinancing it and pulling cash back out of it because you've raised the value, and then you repeat the process. So BRRRR. That is the BRRRR strategy. So when somebody says you're a BRRRR strategy, now you have. Okay. The CapEx versus turn. And again, these are not necessarily in any particular order. CapEx is big dollars being spent on a property. So you have a house, you have a rental house, whatever, air conditioner goes out, CapEx. The roof goes bad, CapEx. The electrical system has to be rewired, the whole house top to bottom, CapEx. A turn is when a tenant moves out and you got to go in and do a little cleaning, paint a few things, do a little touch up, maybe fix the baseboard around the door. The dog scratched the bedroom door up a little bit, whatever. That's a turn. Small maintenance stuff you typically expect to happen. The toilet starts to leak, you replace the toilet. It's not big CapEx. That's mild stuff or turn maintenance. ARV is an acronym, ARV, after repair value. So when somebody says, if you are looking to buy a house and fix it up nice, your agent, these guys here, would say, I found one for you. It's $40,000. The ARV is 110. And I think it'll cost you 30,000 to fix it up. So that means you could buy it for 40, spend 30, now you're in at 70, ARV, 110,000, that's your sale price if you're flipping, or that's your equity value if you're holding. Seasoning. Oftentimes this comes up when you talk about fixing up a house, and when the house has been fixed up, you want to go back to the bank and leverage money against that valuation. A lot of the banks, different banks, will tell you you have to wait for 6 months, sometimes longer, sometimes less. Depends on the bank you're working with. It depends on if you're Fannie Freddie lending. It depends on if it's your boy who's a banker at the smallest bank in Joplin Place or whatever. They have different rules sometimes. So it's worth noting that if you're in a hurry to turn a house, get a renter in it, and get your cash back, this is the BRRRR method I'm kind of referring to. Seasoning comes into play at times. Similar to if you fix up a house in 3 months and you put it on the market and the first day you get an offer and somebody's going to give you full price with an FHA pre-approval, that's a bad deal because FHA will not allow that to happen for a certain amount of time. It's a seasoning period for flip rules for FHA loans. Okay, 1031 exchange. I'm not going to get into this too much. This is a CPA conversation, but essentially a 1031 exchange is when you sell something you've had assets in, a vehicle of investing, and when you sell it, there's a big profit on it. You can roll that profit into another transaction of a similar asset class and defer the taxes on that. The reason why somebody would do this is eventually you have to pay taxes on this unless you pass it on when you pass away. So you can pass on property that has 1031 deferred taxes built up into it, and then someday I'm going to die, so I'll use myself as an example. My kids get my houses, they don't pay taxes on the profit I deferred 10 years before. That's a CPA conversation, though I don't know any more about it than that. Okay, active versus passive. Basically, active investments would be something I go find the house, I'm fixing it up, I'm managing a crew, I'm managing workers to do the things I want to do. I go find the tenants, that's active investing. Passive would be you want to flip a house, you want to help him flip a house, you write a check for the house and you say, bring me my profit when you're done. That's passive. You write a check and let somebody else do the work for you. Or you hook up with your real estate agent and you say, find me a couple houses, you write a check for the house, down payment, loans, whatever. Property manager takes care of the rest, stuff like that. There's also REITs, funds, things you can jump in with other people, partner on deals, stuff like that can make things more passive. I'm a very active investor. I've got my goals and my timeline, so I move a lot more quickly than would make most people comfortable, but I have a plan in place, and so I have my own crews and I pay work comp and stuff I never ever wanted to do before, but it goes in line with my particular why. Percentage of the deal calculation, real quick and easy. If a house costs $100,000 and you can rent it out for $1,000 a month, that is a 1% deal. If it costs $100,000 and it rents for $2,000 a month, that is a 2% deal. In Joplin, Missouri, one of the reasons why this market is so attractive for investors is you can buy turnkey houses that don't need any work that immediately meet the 1% deal and better. You could buy a $100,000 house and get $1,000 a month in rent for it without any effort. Agent calls, yes, I'll buy it. You have a renter in it 30 days later, very passive 1% deal. The 1% deal is very much one of the benchmarks that will keep you, for the most part, out of trouble when you're talking about buy and hold rentals. Because the payment on $100,000 might be $700 if it rents for $1,000 a month, whatever 1% is. There. If it rents for $1,000 a month, that gives you cash flow every month. Okay. ROI, generically, return on investment, total cost of the investment, estimated annual return, $100,000 house, $12,000 in annual rents, is a 12% ROI. This number does not take into consideration whether or not you have debt on the property. Just if you wrote a cash, if you wrote a check for the whole property, 12 grand. It also doesn't go in, this math isn't adding in appreciation, taking out taxes and insurance or expenses, just making a very basic calculation to show the term there. COC or cash on cash return. Same thing. Buy a $100,000 house. Let's pretend my down payment's only 10 grand. My annual rent, same as the last slide, $12,000. Annual expenses, this one's a little more detailed here. $4,000 profit against my $10,000 cash out of pocket. It doesn't matter that the house is 100 grand. I only spent 10,000. So it's a 40% cash on cash return. Primarily, this is the number I use. If this number doesn't make sense to me, I don't care if it's going to appreciate someday, 10 years from now, it's going to be a really hot item. I look at this right here. That's my biggest concern for me personally. And appraisals versus inspections. I think I saw Levain on the call. Levain's a home inspector, but essentially the terms get used interchangeably sometimes because an appraiser has to go out and inspect for the appraisal. They don't do a home inspection, but they see the house. They have to go see the property. So they call it the inspection, but then they take that information home and they build their report and they put out an appraisal, which is a measurement of value. They determine the value of the home. The inspector does not determine value. The inspector goes through the house with a fine-tooth comb in the attic, in the basement, says this wiring is bad, the plumbing needs fixed, that sort of thing. So appraisal versus inspection. FSBO is a for sale by owner. Somebody's advertising on Facebook, I want to sell my house for this much, call me. They're not using a real estate agent, that is a FSBO. And bigger pockets. By the time we're done here today, you're gonna have some information, but not all, not nearly all. I've listened to probably 400 hours of this particular podcast to learn most of what I know now, paired with the fact that I'm a lender, so I understand the market of lending, but this is the education you need or should want if you plan to proceed. This podcast right here, this fella was retired completely by 30 years old, and he started at 25. Was a youth pastor, didn't have tons of money, just bought one at a time, fixed them up, turned them into rentals, and just kept going until he didn't need his regular day job anymore. So it can be done. Anyways, Bigger Pockets is now so huge. They have a rookie podcast, maybe good for some of you. A general money podcast, talks about all things frugality and saving and ways to invest that's not just real estate related. And the Bigger Pockets business podcast, some of you may be business owners. And this is sort of just a how to do better, be more efficient, how to crush in business. And it's really, all of them are extremely good resources. Okay. We are going to jump into some meat and potatoes now. If you have questions, let me know if you have questions now about anything we just talked about. Anyone? Okay.
You measured ROI on a percentage instead of the time.
Sorry, again?
ROI, return on investment, you had it as a percentage and not on a time. Like I normally look for a 5 to 7 year ROI, but you measured it in percentage. Can you flip back to that so I can see how you calculated that percentage again?
Sure. So when you use the term ROI in the context of time, then of course you're going to use it just like you said. My return on my total investment will be 4-year break even or 5-year break even point, a 3-year break even point. That's a perfectly good usage of that phrase. That's fine. At the same time, my return on investment annually was based on this. I'm going to try to get back there.
I think it showed 40%, which would mean
That was cash.
2.5 years.
Okay,
Okay, here you go.
Your perspective, 2.5 years, you'd have all your money back.
okay.
So there's this slide again. Okay, so $100,000 price tag. If it rents for $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 in revenue. Let's assume for a minute there are no expenses because this is just a real generic math problem. No expenses, or maybe you consider this to be your after expense number, whatever. That would be a 12% annual ROI or return on investment annually. right? Because if I make that $100,000 purchase in cash and all my expenses are accounted for before that I calculate this number, I make 12% against my $100,000 check I wrote. Did everybody understand that? Okay. Give me a second to get back forward again. All right, real quick while I'm going through these slides. Anybody own real estate for the purposes of investment property now? One, okay.
There's also about 50 more terms that I didn't look for.
Yes.
We could go on forever.
Flyover. This is a flyover.
Bring a dictionary.
Okay, some of these we'll spend a little more time on because it requires a little more explanation. Some of these are really quick. So house hacking is essentially buy a house, rent out rooms, buy a house, flip the garage and turn it into an ADU, buy a duplex and rent out the other side, et cetera. I had a friend in high school, went to college at Bellingham, Washington. And basically his father bought a duplex for him to live in while he was going to college instead of going through the student housing. It was about the same amount of money per month. And he rented out 2 bedrooms in his side and he managed 3 bedroom rentals, 3 one-bedroom rentals, per roommate on the other side. And by the time he got out of college, Dad had figured out it was such an awesome deal. They had 7 or 8 of them. And he just managed them as his job during school. But house hacking for him was, this is my primary residence. I'm gonna rent out a room or Airbnb a bedroom or Airbnb the detached garage that I fixed up.
What's the financing advantage of house hacking?
Sure, house hacking finance advantage when, from our point of view, from a lender, you can buy a house 0 down, you can buy a house with 3% down or 5% down, and the interest rates are much better when it's a primary residence. So a fella could, I will teach my kids to buy their first home, rent out some rooms, live there for a year or so, buy their next home and move into it, because each time they do that, it's still a primary residence. Therefore, the rates are better, the terms are better, the down payment is lower, and then you can just rent along. And as you move out of one, you fill it back up with tenants and move to the next one. So that would be the main advantages. Plus, some people can live for free under some circumstances, especially like my friend in college. He lived for free. His dad ended up having no payments for his housing and actually made a couple dollars. Well, this is cool, let's do it again. So that turned into what became quite the investment strategy for them, almost by accident. Sorry about that. Buy a 3-2 house for 100 grand, payment 750, rent out each extra bedroom for 375, mortgage payments fully paid by the tenants. Basic. Okay, live and flip. Buy a beat up house and fix it up while you live there. Same thing. There's a benefit to doing this because it's a primary residence, so the rate is better, the down payment is smaller. In comparison, an investment property will typically be 15 or 20% out of pocket to buy said house. A cheap house that needs some work or whatever, maybe 3% down, maybe 5% down. So a very small barrier to entry to get into that home and fix it up over time while you live there, doing the labor yourself. One can add quite a bit of value to that property and use that later on to get into the next one or against some other rental properties. So buy a 3-2 house, needs lots of work, it's only $50,000. Upgrade the bathrooms and kitchen one at a time over the course of a year or 2 while you live there, investing $20,000 in materials, gain quite a bit of equity, and later sell the house, make some money, and do it again. So, value add rentals, my favorite. Okay, purchase a home needs renovation to make it livable with a goal, a goal of renting it out. After I'm done, often done with cash or construction or commercial loan. So, quick example. I just now closing on, maybe next week or so, closing on a duplex that needs a little bit of work, but it's currently rented out. $60,000 I bought this duplex for. As soon as somebody moves out, I'm gonna go in and completely renovate the one side. And then when somebody moves out the other side, I'm gonna go renovate the other side. Thus making that house worth more, because right now it might be $55 a square foot because it's seen better days. Not terrible, but it's seen better days. I can turn that property into maybe $85 square foot or $90 square foot, depending on the market that day, and then refinance later on. Meantime, I get better rents when I renovate, and the equity goes up. So I'm adding to my overall value or wealth number because I added $20,000 or $30,000 of equity to a property by doing work to it. So many times this facilitates very good deals because of the low initial price of the home. You get better deals if they're kind of smelly and ugly and things like this. Okay, so house price of $25,000, done this. I had one for $12,000 actually. House price $25,000. I'm going to spend $17,500 in this example, including siding, HVAC, new windows. It's probably going up because materials are changing. But I'm going to do some work to it and improve the value of the property, maybe repaint some cabinets and things. My total investment is $45,000. House rents for $675 a month. Now that's a 1.8% deal. If this house was already turnkey when I found it, it might cost me $67,000. Rents for $675. That's only 1% deal. So when you start with the ugly house, sometimes you can end up in a much better cash flow position because you put a little elbow grease into it. This is just like on TV, right? Buy a house, needs work, you work on it, fix it up, sell it for a profit. The good thing about sitting in this room right now is you have the resources of Ryan's team. All these guys are very versed in how that house is going to praise out or what those comps look like, and can give you a good idea of that ARV or after repair value. So you look at a house that's only $25,000 and you think, man, it's going to cost me 30 grand to fix this. And he says, yeah, it's only going to be worth 60 when you're done. That's not a good deal. But your resource here says that house will comp for 120 all day long when you're finished with it. Okay, even if I go over budget, I still got a lot of margin there. That's an okay deal for me. That's the one I want, because if I make a mistake or I mess up, I got a lot of buffer room to cover up some sins, right? Okay, house price $25,000 and renovation $17,500, same as the last example. Siding, HVAC, new windows, flooring, bathroom. House is listed for $69,000, sells for $65,000, and after commissions, closing costs, and carrying costs are considered a profit of $13,000 is realized. It's a very conservative example, but essentially we're just trying to keep it consistent with the last example there. And the BRRRR method. Okay, has anybody heard of this before? Couple. This phrase has been popping around because the guys at Bigger Pockets coined this term a few years ago and have been using it. Now there's a book on it. They wrote the book on BRRRR investing. The strategy isn't brand new, but they just made it popular. Essentially, it is a combination of some of the strategies we've already started talking about. So I'll do my best here, since we don't have flashcards and things, to just kind of walk through this. The same house, $25,000. I buy with a construction loan. That means a local bank, an SMB, a People's Bank of Seneca, a First Community Bank of Neosho, the CBTs of the world, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a respecter of persons. I work with a couple of them. I'm a lender, but we don't do construction loans. The banks that lend their own money, like these small local hometown banks, will do these construction loans for you. So I buy the house for $25,000 with a construction loan requiring 20% down, let's say. So I put down $5 grand. Okay, so my money in so far is $5, leaving a loan amount of $20,000. Then my construction, I think, is going to cost $17,500. Talked about this in the last example. I think I'm going to put $17,500 into the house. Maybe I'm doing all the work myself, and that's just materials. That will bring my loan amount to $37,000. 25 grand minus 5,000 for down payment leaves 20 plus 17,500 is 37,000. Now I'm going to rent the house out for $675 a month. That is a nice 1% or 1.9 or 8% deal right there. Then I'm going to go back to the bank, maybe the same bank, maybe a different bank, and I say, hey, bank, I got this house here. I think it's worth a lot more than $37,000. I'd like to do a refinance, to cash out home loan is, or a home equity line of credit, essentially the same thing. They will go back out and value the house again and say, you know what, that house is worth $69,000. An appraiser will do that. The bank will order that appraisal. We can now borrow up to 80%, sometimes 85%, depending on the bank and their terms and rules. We can borrow up to 80% of this new value, which is $55,200, okay? The old numbers are out, new numbers are in. House is worth $69,000 and 85% of that is $55,000. We pay off the old loan of $37,500. That's what we owe the other bank. Plus let's $2,000 for closing costs or so. We can pay ourselves back the original $5,000 deposit, that's up here, right? Because 55,000 minus 37 leaves room for that. And any carrying costs, maybe I spent a few bucks on utility bills while I owned it, the insurance, I have a house payment or two, interest only and things. So I spent a little money while I had the house sitting, being renovated. Now I still have $8,200 left over. This is now the magic button. Buy the house for one price. I fix it up using somebody else's money. The house is worth this. I borrow this much against it. I get my money back and put more money in my pocket, get to keep the house and make $300 a month in rent. Magic. So you could essentially, if done well, you could use the same $5,000 over and over again. You don't have to save for the next down payment, or the next down payment, or the next down payment. You could just keep buying houses, renovating them, and doing this. I have done this a couple of times, a number of times. I have one that I left about $5,000 in the deal by the time we're done because the appraiser did not agree with me on the values. Happens. But the very next one, I got $13,000 extra back. So, you know, it balanced out. This is the BRRRR method. It's like magic.
So I can go back one more time because there's a lot there and I'm doing one right now myself. So in Seneca, I was sitting at home on a Saturday, a realtor calls, says, hey, house going up on Monday. It's not up yet. Are you interested? I said, sure. And I went and I ended up buying it for $16,000 cash. I had some money in the bank. So I was fortunate to do that. That's the easy way to get into BRRRR. You don't have to do that if you don't have that much money, or you can borrow that money. There's a group of people out there called hard money lenders that once you start getting in, you'll hear about these hard money lenders. Basically what they are is they're private investors that have money, and you would take a project like this to them and say, this is what I want to do. Would you loan me the money to buy it? So if I didn't have $16,000, go to a hard money lender. Hard money lenders will charge more than a bank. It might charge 8 to 10% interest, but they're really short-term loans. I'm only going to have that money out there for a few months until my refinance comes through. So 10% for 3 months on $16,000 just isn't enough money to lose sleep about. For me, I had the cash. I paid $16,000 for the house. I actually hired Sam's project manager to come out to the property and walk it, and he built for me a scope of work. So he walked the whole house line by line. It needs this, it will cost this. It needs this, it will cost this. He does that for a living, so he's really fast at doing that. I probably could have done that by multiple trips to Lowe's and figuring it out, but for $200, he did it for me. That was value to me. It's going to cost $21,000 total to make that house move-in ready. I know because I own 14 rentals in Seneca that that property will rent for about $650. You may not know that, but there are realtors in this room that do know that. So the things that you really need to know if you're going to get into a BRRRR, obviously, what's it going to cost to fix it? That's really important. What's it going to be worth after it's fixed, and how much will it rent for? Those are the 3 key things that you probably won't know. So you need to find people that can help. What will it be worth after repair value? Like I said, there's realtors in this room that can tell you. What will it rent for? There's realtors in this room that can tell you that as well. How much is it going to cost? You may need to hire a contractor. You may need to hire a handyman. I, fortunately, have access to Sam's guy, so I hired Sam's guy. I get a sheet. It's going to cost $21,000 to fix. I took that to the bank, and I said, here's the deal. I bought this house. I paid $16,000 cash. These are the scope of work items that need done. It's going to cost about $21,000. They sent an appraiser out. The appraiser walked the property and is going to give me, it's essentially an ARV, an after repair value. Appraisers call it something different. It's called a subject to completion of plans and specs. So what they're doing is they're giving a hypothetical value of a property in the future based upon the plans and specs that I submitted. So once all these $21,000 worth of repairs are done, that property will be worth X amount of dollars. That turned out to be $55,000. People's Bank of Seneca now says, well, it's worth $55,000. We'll give you 85% of that back. So I will get, when it closes, my $16,000 back. They'll hold money in escrows in a line of credit for me to pay my contractor to do the $21,000 with work. And then at the end, there's going to be about $7,000 or $8,000 left over that I'll just put in my pocket. And now my $16,000 goes up to $24,000 cash in the bank. So next time I do it, now I have even more money so I can take on an even bigger project. That's why BRRRR is so powerful, because you recycle money.
The only thing he has to pay attention to now is staying on budget.
That's right.
Because if he can meet that $21,000 dead on, then he'll put 16 plus 8 in his pocket to be used on the next deal, gets to keep the house, still has and puts a renter in it, and manages the renter. Now he has more rent.
If we screw up and waste, I could waste up to another $8,000. So I could go almost up to $30,000 and still get my $16,000 back. I just wouldn't get to put that extra 8 in my pocket. But now I have a rental. I don't have any dollars at all invested in the rental. My loan payment, including taxes and insurance, is $412. I'm renting it for $650. So I'm making money on no money. I have no money in that deal, and I'm making almost $250 every single month.
During that renovation, you'll replace the hot water heater, you'll replace a few windows, maybe fix the roof, depending on what the house needs. And ideally then limit your capital expenditures or your large expenses, because you've already fixed everything that could go wrong, right? I mean, I'm of the habit of redoing all the plumbing in all my houses. The last freeze we just had, we had 4 houses break pipes. I don't want to do that anymore. So if I'm cutting the floor up, all the plumbing is getting redone, so that later when it's a rental, it's never going to come up again for, well, under ideal circumstances. But if we do it right, it should last for a very long time without us having to worry about it too much, because PEX expands when it gets cold. It's fine. It'll go back. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Everybody good with this?
It's not for everybody. It's one of the strategies. Obviously, we both like it.
It's not the only strategy, but it's kind of a big one to explain. I use this as part of my goals and my strategies. This won't be the only thing available to you, and it's not the only thing I do, but it is something I do a lot of. Okay? Turnkey. This one's very easy in the sense where a turnkey house means that the house is rented already or rentable as it sits, and CapEx should be very low or non-existent. So just look on the MLS, find a house, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, 125,000. Can I rent that for 1%? Will it rent for $1,200? Well, I don't know, Ryan, can I rent that for $1,200? He says, I can. Okay, great. That's a 1% deal. I think I'll buy that, put in my offer. As soon as that gets purchased, you turn it over to your management company. They find you a tenant and you're done again. Like, you're done. They don't call you unless there's a bigger repair than a few $100. They call you and say, we got to replace a thing. It's going to be $350. Is that okay with you? Yeah, sure, fine. Oh, a very good way to diversify a portfolio and let somebody else manage it for you, just like you would stocks and bonds and your Edward Jones advisor or equivalent, okay? Similar, buy property, let somebody manage it for you, reputable company, but you're just putting money into a different vehicle to diversify away from just stocks or just bonds or just 401ks or gold or whatever, okay? Purchase a home for $100,000. Paint interior and change the locks, it's ready to rent. Rent for $1,100 a month, that's a 1.1% deal. Everybody understand the 1.1%, right? Okay, real easy. I'm buying we'll get to new construction in a second, but I'm buying new construction houses from Schubert Mitchell and turning them into rentals. Not all, couple. Why? Because it's just an easy offset to what I'm doing currently. I work on a lot of houses. I got a bunch of them that need renovation. In the meantime, I'm just going to put some money down on a new house that's under warranty. I don't have to mess with it. I got somebody that will put a tenant in there and manage it for me. The end. That's what my wife likes. She doesn't like messing with all the other stuff. So, new construction. This could be looked at 2 different ways. You can build these and then keep them. You can build them and sell them, of course, or you can buy them built brand new, so to speak. There's a few builders in town that build sort of a good-looking 3-2 that rents out pretty good. The numbers work pretty good. So anyways, build a brand new construction rental to hold as rentals. if built correctly, these can be done with the BRRRR strategy as well. Build a 2,400 square foot example, buy a 2,400 square foot duplex for $85 a square foot. That's $204,000. I believe these numbers are probably elevated now, but refinance at a value of $104 a square foot for $249,000. You had to put money down to get the loan to build this, but when cashed out, your refinance should be able to get your down payment back, and now you have a duplex sitting there that's brand new. You rent out each side for $900 and have a payment of $1,500, including taxes and insurance. Realize $4,500, $45,600 profit through the equity and $300 of rent profit a month. So now I'm $45,000 richer, right? Because I have equity in a property, just like I have equity in gold and silver or stocks and bonds or index funds, cryptocurrencies. I got $45,000 richer, and I get $300 a month in cash flow towards my daily bills or whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. Cash flow is a real driver for me. I want to replace my income with rental income someday. So there we go. I'm multifamily. When it comes to residential real estate, multifamily is defined by 1 to 4 units. A duplex, a triplex, a quad. When you get bigger than that, it is commercial. The numbers change, the appraisals change, the inspections change, the expenses change.
The loans change.
Yeah, the loans change.
It's all different.
That's why that line divides at 4 units versus going from 5 to up. 1 to 4 property or 1 to 4 unit property with secondary market loans. So you can come to me as a loan officer and say, I want to put money down and buy a duplex, let's say, from a builder, or this duplex is on the MLS. And I say, great, I need you to put 25% down for 2 unit. And you say, great, and then we do the loan for you, and you buy the property, rent it out. Very simple, just like a single family. The terms change just a little bit, but you can do a 30-year loan with very decent rates compared to sort of the commercial loans, the construction loans at different higher rates. 3 to 4 units is primary. FHA loans work for 1 to 4 units. This is great for house hacking. If you have children that are getting close to buying houses or could be getting close to buying houses, help them find a duplex or a triplex and they can house hack. 3.5% down, and they can buy a 3 unit, rent out 2 more units, and start their life with easy living expense.
So I actually had a client who was a first-time home buyer, and he bought a quad with an FHA loan, put 3.5% down, and rented out the other. They're already rented, and so he lived in one of the units and rented out the others, and made quite a bit of money every month.
Pretty awesome. If he chooses to move in a year or 2 and do it again, now he can put, some small amount down because his primary residence. Now he's got 7 units plus his primary, and a very different terms and rates than you normally would with a commercial loan.
It's a 30-year fixed, which is important. It's worth noting. But so I used to work for People's Bank of Seneca, did a lot of commercial lending. We have what's called portfolio loans, meaning I give you my own money from the bank on my own terms, and we're not selling in those loans or anything. It's in-house lending. It's great, it's flexible, but if you want to buy any of these duplexes, triplexes, quads, or bigger, say you want to buy a 12-unit apartment complex, I'll make the loan for you at People's Bank of Seneca, but it's going to be a 5-year balloon. The reason that smaller banks do that is because there is interest exposure that they are at risk to. Meaning right now we're in an environment where rates are rising. Rates were dropping. They bottomed out, and now gradually they're starting to go back up. So if a small community bank makes a whole bunch of loans today, 30-year fixed at, say 4%, and then 9 years from now, rates trickle up and they're back up at 6%, all of a sudden, small community bank is losing a lot of money because it's the cost of that money, because they're paying for deposits on the other side. And so now they're at tremendous risk. So what they do to alleviate that risk is they put it on a 5-year balloon. I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody. It's so that 5 years from now, they can reanalyze what rates are doing. And if they need to bump that rate so that they're not losing money, they will. That's great for them, but it kind of sucks if you have a $300,000 loan on a quadplex that goes from 4% cash flowing to 5 years from now, it's at 6.5%, and you're not cash flowing anymore. So there's risk in your portfolio if you get a bunch of those. So what's nice about the 30-year fixed loans that lenders like we offer is that it's fixed out so you can plan that income over the entire life of that loan. So it's, once you get in and get going, it's worth thinking about. There's benefits to 30-year fix. Makes sense?
So whether it be multifamily or single-family homes or duplexes or, you know, I have a house in Pittsburgh I bought across the street from Pitt State. Old Victorian house, just around the corner from the frat houses and stuff. And it had 5 bedrooms, an extra dining room. One of the rooms is really large. And we went in with about 25 grand and turned that into an 8-bedroom, 4-bathroom, 2-kitchen boarding house. Rent out the rooms and utilities included, 8 bedrooms times about $400. It's a cash flow monster. We did that with a commercial loan, like he's talking about, because Fannie and Freddie's not, they don't play in the fringe. That it's like, yeah, that's not what we do, sorry. So I had to go with a different banking style to do that property. Now my goal is to make sure that I'm paying attention to the interest rates in case they start to creep. I want to refinance before I get to the 5 years so that I'm not forced to refinance when I don't like the rates, or try to pay that property off, or keep it for 5 years and then sell it and move into a different property with that 1031 exchange opportunity. So the great thing about real estate is there is so many ways to make money. These are not the only ones. These are the most common that people kind of get started with. So, all right.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions about any of the strategies we just talked about before we move on to the next little bit here? Anyone? Okay. Go ahead.
So yeah, next section, how to find a deal. It's kind of the thing. It all starts with the deal. And the deeper in you go, you'll find the deals kind of find you. Like there was a while, I had a really hard time finding properties that fit my strategy in Seneca, because that's such a niche little thing. I want properties less than 25,000 that need less than 30,000 of work that can profit me $200 to $300 when I BRRRR out. So there's not that many. Seneca only has 900 houses in city limits. So there's just not that many of those, right? And now all of a sudden I'm under contract on one and 2 more show up. And now I'm like, oh crap, my wife's gonna kill me. So the more you get in, the more people figure out what you're doing, deals come. But when you're starting out, it can feel so hard to find a deal. And in today's market, they'll tell you, and all the realtors will tell you, they go so fast. A good deal just flies off the shelf right now because there's just not much inventory anywhere. But the first place you want to start with all of this is what they call in Bigger Pockets and a few other places, the core 4. So you're going to have to build a team. You're not going to hire people. They're not going to work for you, but these are people that will work with you to help start the process. So you need a deal finder. That's one of the realtors here to start off with. You're going to tell them, you know, I went through it. I really think I like that BRRRR strategy. That sounds neat. I like this part of town, whatever, you know, Joplin, I'm in Carthage, me, I'm in Seneca. This is my price range. This is where I like to be, you know, see what comes up. And so I have a bunch of realtors. Now it's getting where everybody knows that I'm in Seneca. And so I'll find out about a property and there'll be like a week's trail where 9 different realtors will call. Hey, there's a Skylar Wallace special in Seneca. I know, I've already walked it. So a deal finder is great. Once you start getting in, you can get creative on your deal finders. There's lots of ways to have people finding deals. An example that I like to talk about is there's some people in bigger metros that hire out fleets of Uber drivers, and they tell them, hey, I want to find houses that have overgrown yards. If you ever drive by a house and it has 2 meters on it, there's a good chance that's a house that was turned into a duplex. So they hire Uber drivers who are driving around all day long. An Uber driver finds a house, they call them, and if it ends up going under contract, they'll give them $500. So there's lots of ways to hire people to find deals for you. The property manager can be very important. Like I say, I've been self-managing 14 properties is not the most fun thing in the world. Having a good property manager that you can use is fantastic. It makes the whole thing a lot easier, especially starting out. Finding tenants can be hard. How are you going to screen them? What background checks are you going to run? If you pull their credit, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get the credit reports? How are you going to collect rent every single month? You know, what does that look like? Look, there's a lot of logistics that go into it all. So hiring a company isn't a bad idea because then it's literally just Oh, okay, we'll take 10% of rents, or we'll take 9% of rents, and we'll do everything else. And that's it. That's all you have to do. So it's not the worst idea. The contractor is very important unless you happen to be a contractor. If you are a contractor, you have some advantage because you can probably walk a property now and figure out about what it's going to cost to make it livable. I'm not a contractor. Sam's not a contractor. I don't know hardly anything about it. So I hire.
Technically, I'm a contractor. But I don't actually know how to do it. I hire people.
Yeah, so it's good to have, even if it's just a handyman. Let's say you decide, I really like these Schubert Mitchell houses. That's a cool thing. But just having a guy that you can call and say, hey, the tenant said they, bumped into the garage and it's dented. Like just having somebody that can go out and do that. The contractor, if you really get a good one that you trust, a lot of times they can play the role of home inspector too. So I pay $300 to a home inspector every time I buy a house because I don't know. And they do everything. They give me a nice report and they tell me what to worry about. But if you have a contractor that you really trust, you can go to the property with them and the contractor can do that. And what's nice about that is that what I have to do is I have to relay all the information from that report from my inspection over to my contractor. So there's like a little game of telephone there. But if you have a good contractor you trust, you can just walk the property with them, figure out everything that's wrong, and they'll put it all in the scope of work for you. So lastly is the lender. Unless you're cash buyers, which if you are, that's great. You should still have a lender because leverage is powerful. But having a good lender, figuring out how much you can buy, figuring out what you can buy, which properties you can buy. Sam and I can do a lot of those things. We don't do construction lending, what we talked about, but we know all of the lenders that do, and we work with most of the good ones. And so we can be a good resource for you there in the core four. But really, once you solidify those four, it becomes a lot less scary to make the offer on the first house because the contractor tells you it's going to cost this much. I'm comfortable with it. The property manager tells you it'll rent for this much. I'll find you the tenant and take care of it. The deal finder realtor says, I'll find the house. That's not a problem at all. Lender says, yeah, you're good. Here's a pre-approval letter. You can buy the house. Go make an offer. And it takes all of the unknowns away by having those four people in your corner. So if you need help meeting those people, I mean, you can just start with the realtors in this room and they can probably introduce you to most of them. So then we get into the hunt. So first thing you do is tell everyone you know that you buy real estate. Put it on Facebook. And the key is to be specific. So I buy preferably less than $25,000 dumps in Seneca, preferably out of the flood zone, or at least don't flood, because a lot of Seneca is in the flood zone, but it doesn't flood. So you just have to know the areas. And I tell everybody that, everybody knows. And so just naturally deals come to me. So you come back to, your strategy. You have to figure out what you want to do. And once you know what you want to do, you have to be crystal clear when you tell everyone, this is what I do. And then that's how you start getting deals and building momentum. You can drive neighborhoods yourself. You can hire an Uber driver fleet if you want to be fancy. These two apps right here will help. Driving for Dollars or Deal Machine. These are amazing. You can literally open a Deal Machine app and hold your camera at a house, and it will not only pop up and tell you who owns the house, but it'll give you best guess their email and their phone number. And you can right there call them right away. And so if you find a house that's overgrown and in shambles and needs a lot of work, you pull this out. Costs between $4 and $5 a property. It's not free. You pull it up, you scan it, all the information you would ever need is right there. You can call them. It's literally that easy. So the people that hire Uber drivers use these apps. That's what they do. They give the Uber drivers these. The Uber drivers just drive around and scan houses all day.
Buy a house, you think, man, it'd be nice to own the one next door too, because the yard is kind of shared in a funky way. It doesn't look like anybody lives there. Pull out the app, take a photo, call that person or start making offers. Hey, if you ever sell this place, I'd be a buyer on it. Sometimes you'll get to it long before that person comes around and tries to sell it a different way. This works for real estate agents too, man. Somebody got to sell this house, right? Take a photo of it, try and get a hold of the seller. Maybe you can pick it up as a listing.
These are cool, yeah. So tell realtors exactly what you're looking for. Talked about that. A house pops up in Seneca now that meets my criteria. I have 7 or 8 realtors that call me just because I'm crystal clear about it. If I just said, you know what, I want to buy houses in Seneca, like nobody would call me because, I mean, houses come up for Seneca all the time. There's a $240,000 home that came up in town that was really nice. I would never buy that for a rental. It would never work. And that's not what I do. And so nobody called me on it. So this is a really big one. Search Facebook and Craigslist for leads. So when I have a tenant move out of a property, I have to find a new tenant. The easiest way to do that is to go, for me now, Seneca has like a marketplace page, like a Facebook group. Joplin has one, Carthage has one, Carthage has one. I just go in there and I post the details of the property, and then people just, direct message me on Facebook, and that's fine. I under rented a listing one time, and I got like 170 messages in a week, and I was like, I can't, it's too much. But what happens is every time I have to do that, it's annoying. Like I just get tired. Somebody calls you randomly and they want to talk about the property, whatever you're doing, you have to talk to them. And then I have to send over the information. I have to explain to them why I want to pull their credit. I have to talk about the background checks. Then I got to go to the property and I got to show them the house. It's just like anytime a tenant moves out, it just opens up a whole bunch of work that eventually could get annoying. And I might think, that property has had plumbing issues. The heat and air is not doing so well. I think I'm just going to sell it. I'm not going to find a tenant this time.
So basically the ideal time to catch a landlord at their worst.
It's the worst time.
Worst
tenant moves out.
Relationship with that house.
I'm at the lowest with that house. I hate it.
So you can catch that landlord because they're posting it online.
Yeah.
I need to rent this house out.
The day the tenant moves in a new 12-month lease, I won't have to be at this house for at least a year. This is the best day ever.
Potentially a lot of opportunity to catch a guy like that who's a little bit frustrated with a particular property, to call the listing and say, you ever thought about just selling that house? You'll catch somebody that says, you know what? Yes, I have 3 of them I'd like to sell actually.
Yep, and you've gotten the coveted off-market deal. It's off-market, it's not on the MLS. The value of that is as soon as it hits the MLS, everybody sees it. I have alerts set up on Zillow. As soon as a new property in my little area of Seneca pops, Zillow sends me a text and an email. And I go, look, but I know instantly. And so does every other investor in town. And then there was a group that decided to auction a house in Seneca that was like the perfect rental. It met everything that I needed in my criteria. Only they decided to do it as an auction that they advertised. And I went and I was excited. I was like, this is great. Surely nobody's going to be at this auction. But it sold for like $60,000 over what my top dollar was. It just made no sense. So off-market deals are fantastic. And that's how you find them, is you just spend some time calling some people saying, hey, I saw you just put that house up here. Thought about selling it. Or ask your realtor to do it for you, your deal finder.
Off-market deal doesn't mean you can't use a real estate agent. Just means that it's not currently listed with somebody, and therefore you might be the only one that knows about it, kind of thing.
Yep. Not trying to skimp on a commission. I don't mind paying somebody that brings a deal to me a commission. That's fair. What I'm trying to skip out on is having the market drive the price up and then losing out on a good deal. So let's say that we find the deal. We found a house. We got a good off-market deal. So what do we do next? So I have created something. This is the easiest tool you can use to analyze a property. This is the baseline. I'm not saying you should go all in and base your entire career on this analyzer. My goal is mostly just use it as a tool to be as simple as possible. There's just 3 variables that you put in on this analyzer. So I've given you, if anybody didn't get one of these, I think I have one left. These flash drives, if you stick that in your computer, this Excel file is saved on there. Have at it. It's a lot of fun. You can enter the property address in, purchase price, either what it's listed at. If you find an off-market deal, what they say you can buy it for, put your purchase price in. This will automatically convert 15% down. You can go in and change that to 20%, or if you're going to house hack, you can change it to 5% or 3%. You can go in and change that if you want to. It automatically does 15. Rent estimate. You may have to call your realtor and say, hey, what do you think this house in this neighborhood would rent for? That's a hard number to figure out. It looks really easy on here. I'm gonna buy a $50,000 house, I'm gonna put 7,500 down, I'm gonna rent for 750. But when you're looking at properties online and you think, oh, look at this little 2-1 in Carl Junction. I wonder what that would rent for. You have no idea. So you have to call people, you have to ask around, talk to landlords, other people in the area that might know. Let's say you decide this is gonna rent for 750, so you would put that in. Expense multiplier is basically what this is this is covering things like, let's say you have a turn and you miss a month's rent. So tenant moves out, it takes you a little while, you don't collect rent in June of that particular year. Let's say that you have to, replace a toilet or, paint or whatever. This is going to automatically account 10% of rents to go to that. So it's basically a savings account, 10% of all rents coming in. It's saying, and you can change this too, you don't have to. 90 is a good safe number to be at once you start going. If you want to be more conservative, you might go to 75. If you want to be more optimistic, you might go to 95. Just depends. But so this uses 90%. It's going to automatically tell you the annualized rents. So it's going to take your rents times 12 times 90, boom, annualized rent. Loan amount is just automatically going to populate 50,000 minus 7,500, boom, interest rate. This is where you're going to call your lenders. 3.5%, probably not right now on investment property. Probably if it's a primary and you're house hacking or something, might be more like 4. You have to call your lender and figure out what your rate is. An interest rate is a lot more complicated than just what you see on Facebook when Quicken Mortgage sends you an ad and says rates today, 2.99. It's a lot more complicated, and everybody's rate could be a little bit different depending on a lot of factors: your credit, your income, where you're buying. I mean, county by county, they can change sometimes.
Down payment size,
down payment,
insurance.
A lot of things go into that. So you need to call your lender and figure out what's my rate. Term. I run it all at 20 years, 240 months. If you're going to get into the loans that we do, you change that to 360, 30-year fixed. Awesome. That means that the loan payment's going to go down. But this deal is running on 20 years. That's a good baseline to be at. I also don't mind having debt, but I don't mind paying it off a little bit faster because then I'm a long-term hold guy, meaning I don't buy properties and then sell them 3-4 years later. If I buy a property, I'm going to hold it. I'm going to keep it for good. So this is going to automatically calculate your loan payment. It's going to estimate taxes and insurance. You can go in and actually do these yourself. If you go on Realtor.com, any property, for the most part, is going to show you the last year's property tax amount. That's important. You have to pay that. So if you're buying a house and property taxes are $1,700 because you decided to buy in Kansas versus in Missouri, property taxes are way higher in Kansas than they are in Missouri. You have to pay $1,700 every single year. So you have to account for that when you do your numbers. Insurance, if you're going to get a bank loan, you're required to have insurance. If you're going to pay cash, probably should have insurance unless you're very wealthy and can self-insure, which is a good strategy. I know people who do it, but I can't afford to do that. So I buy insurance. This uses 1%. It automatically calculates 1% for each. If you want to be specific, you can go in, but this is a good baseline. It's going to tell you your total monthly payment, and then it's going to do some really cool things over here. It'll automatically calculate your ROI. It'll automatically calculate percent of the deal. So this is a 1.5% deal. It'll automatically tell you your monthly cash flow. And then I've built in a system here where as these numbers go down, the deals get worse. It goes down to 2.5. I usually will buy somewhere about a B or higher. But this is very basic. But if you've never analyzed a property ever, it is a great place to start. You can go right now on Zillow in your little area and find 10 houses for sale and put every single one of them through here, just like that. And just start getting familiar with the process of how you analyze a property.
What's neat about this too is you can work backwards. You think, maybe your agent calls, you can buy a house for 70,000. So you punch that number in and you do the math and it comes up with a C, let's say. You think, well, I don't like C, I only like B's and A's, right? Don't we all? So you can kind of work this down. I don't want to pay 70,000 for it. What do I have to pay for that house to get to a B plus or whatever? So you can kind of change the number, hit enter, change the number, hit enter, and it'll do the math for you and tell you, am I on to something here? Again, this is, I'll be honest, I don't use this but I've done this a bunch of times. This is a great tool for that first time out. You're just doing a quick little math problem and say, well, that looks like a pretty decent deal. Now you're going to dig deeper and look at some more things, maybe crawl into the house and look at the plumbing. But at a very initial sort of, that's overpriced for my strategy, or that's right in my wheelhouse. I like this one. That kind of gives you that first initial,
I have one of these that's like an Excel file with 9 tabs at the bottom and literally like 700 variables you can put in and just completely overanalyze something to death. Or you can just put in 3. It's your question.
I did, so this doesn't take into account using like a property manager.
Right. So
Yeah, you could add that in down here in expense multiplier.
What is the market rate for that?
10% is a pretty good number. You call around and talk to, I know Keller does some property management, so they could answer that question about their stuff. Just a couple of folks in town in general.
But that's something you could build in.
Yeah, you
That's right.
can just change that percentage to 80
Yep, absolutely.
for the extra 10% if you want to be a little more conservative.
So, yeah, it's a good, that's why this is
Then you might
just,
decide that
Good
Bs are
baseline.
good enough for me because I use a property manager. It's an A+ in my book
Plus
because
an
I don't have to deal with it. Voila. Yeah.
so this is, it's actually pretty useful, but it's really an educational tool to kind of get you used to the idea of analyzing. If you're really interested in this, BRRRR does, if you go out and like their Facebook page and sign up for their mailing list, once a month, Brandon Turner, who is the guy that Sam said was a youth pastor and retired in 5 years, does a lot of Facebook Live where I did it. I went on the call and they have calculators that are much more in depth. They're not free, you have to buy them. But on the call, he'll ask, where's everybody from? And somebody said Oklahoma City. Okay, great. He jumps out to Zillow, found a property for sale in Oklahoma City, ran it through the BRRRR analyzers, did the whole thing, and decided if they were going to make an offer or not. And so you can go on that. It's an hour-long webinar. It's really interesting, and it's more of a deep dive. This is just high-level, easy stuff. This is important, but there you can overanalyze. And then all of a sudden, you start scaring yourself out of every deal. So that's the other thing. You don't need to do that. There's a certain amount in real estate where you can make money on every single property. Doesn't even matter what you pay for it. If you're willing to wait long enough and collect rents long enough, after 30 years, it's going to appreciate out of any mistakes you make. If you're real committed. So,
There's some safety in that.
there is. Yeah, I wouldn't want to buy a property thinking I'm going to profit on it 31 years from now. But you could. It's possible. So they say it's impossible to lose money in real estate if you grind long. So I don't know. Ask other investors about market rents. Ask your realtors. Go out. Just look on Facebook and people post properties on these groups, and they post rent amounts. You look at enough of those, you can start figuring out a 3.2 in this area rents for this or close to it. A good thing to do is just set a goal and analyze so many properties a week. It's a really good thing to do if you like this stuff and you want to get into it. Looking at properties, running them through that analysis tool over and over and over is a really good thing to do. And you start getting familiar with properties and rents and all the things. It's good. It's good practice. The other thing we've created is it's called Level Up Cheat Sheet. And so what this is here, you have a copy of this as well on there. This is a fillable PDF that we encourage our investor-friendly real estate agents to use, and we encourage our new investors to use. Basically, this is a one sheet to walk a property. This is a fillable PDF. You can actually use it from your phone as well. So if you walk into a property, you can put the address, value, taxes, rent comps, square footage. The property condition scale covers all of the CapEx. And so a 1 would mean like it just got a brand new roof. A 5 would mean like the roof has to go. And so you would just go down the list and put a number in there, or you'd have a realtor do it. So ideally, what would happen is a property would go up and a realtor would just email you this completed sheet. And so you can look at it, and it even goes so far up here to calculate a few things, cash on cash return, those kinds of things. If I was a real estate agent wanting to grow my business, I would walk properties and just fill this out. And then I would ask people that come to new investor meetings to give their email. And then I would make an email list of all those people. And then I would just email this sheet straight to all those people. So I would, but I'm a lender, so I don't do that. But down at the bottom, it also has value add opportunities. This is really important. Sometimes I bought a house. I don't know, Sam's probably done this 50 times. I bought a house that had this weird room in the back that was under a roof, and it had exterior walls, but it was just like a little, it was like off the carport. It was just a concrete floors little room. Didn't count in square footage or anything, but it was like 200 square feet. And so we finished it, turned it into a third bedroom, and I got like $9 grand for that on my appraised value because I added square footage and a bedroom and everything. And so value add opportunities would be anything creative like that. Like, hey, this thing has a shop in the back and maybe we could turn that into an Airbnb, or this has, you know, just anything interesting. And so this is a good sheet to get used to using as you walk properties and try to find use. So, and again, it's on there too. I can email it to you if you don't have it. But I think the next step is how to buy. You probably bought your house if you own the home you live in at some point. Buying a rental is a little different, but it's still a similar process. So these are the things you need to do. I mean, you talk to a lender like Samurai to get pre-approved unless you're going to do a construction loan. Then talk to a lender that does that. But you want to get pre-approved. Talk to a realtor. Say, hey, I'm really interested in BRRRR. I like it. I want a house in this price range in this area that needs about this much work. Start setting your strategies. Find somebody that can help you find it. Talk to a CPA or a real estate attorney. So then the question after you buy the house is, how are you going to own the house? Are you going to own it in just your name? Are you going to put it in an LLC? You can put just a home in an LLC. I mean, you can put it in a corporation if you wanted. Why would you want to hold ownership in different ways? All of those are questions to talk to a CPA about. There's tax advantages. There's protections that come if you hold the property in an LLC versus in your name. That's an important conversation to have. We're not the people to have it with. So CPAs are great, real estate attorneys as well. Talk to an insurance agent. Whenever you buy a house and you're getting the loan on the home, you have to have insurance before we can close the loan. So find an insurance agent you like, tell them what you're trying to do, figure out the process of what it looks like to get quotes. There's a lot of good insurance agents in town that if you find a property, you can call them up and just say, hey, could you give me a quote so I get an idea of what insurance would cost on this home? Because when you're analyzing it, that's important. So those are really the steps to buying one of these houses. So from there, it's, back to taking action. I mean, we talked about the what. This is one option to invest in residential real estate. Is that a place where you want to invest? If it is, then the next thing to do would be the how. I would not recommend studying all 8 strategies right now. I'd find 1 or maybe 2 that are of interest to you and taking a deeper dive. If you like BRRRR, you can go on Bigger Pockets and search podcasts about BRRRR. You find 15 or 20 podcasts and you can listen to those and learn just like that. But narrow that down, figure out why you want to do this. What's the motivation? There's a good chance the why will determine your strategy as well. Sam wants to retire early, he wants to go really fast. He literally launched a construction company to do that. To me, I don't have, like going kind of fast, but I'm going to hire a contractor. I'm not going to, there's no way I'm going to do that.
It's a lot of work. And so I think that's a good point though. Finding your why will dictate what strategy you use, because if your why is, I just want to diversify some investments into some property, then that might be right down the road of let's buy some new construction houses that's not under warranty, very low maintenance. I'm going to hook up with the property management team and I'm just going to buy 1 a year. It's just a way to offset some taxes, or it might be a way to, like I said, diversify same time. And then, but if your why is, I'd like to replace my job so I don't have to do my current job anymore, and I think I can do that in a couple of years, then you might be to go faster and to get better rips on your rents versus your costs and things, then the BRRRR strategy might be your, your biggest motivation. because you can go a little faster. Each deal's a little bit better. You know, if your cash out of pocket is limited, if your available resources are a little bit more limited, the BRRRR strategy might be a good one, or the house hacking might be the way to go. So anyways, that will kind of dictate which direction you sort of lean to. And most of you are already self-identifying with one of those strategies, so that's probably what I would want to do. You know? So you're going to discuss this with your real estate agency. Like, I want a house I can own that has enough room I can rent out some bedrooms. A good conversation to start with, because it starts to set the precedent for what your next steps are.
Most important is just to take action. If you want to do this, if you just want to buy turnkey properties and rent them, I mean, you can do that right now. If you have the cash, just talk to Ryan. Say, hey, I'd like to buy in this neighborhood. I'd like to spend this much money. It's as easy as that. They'll be able to introduce you to property management. They'll be able to do all that. It's just an easy play. If you really want to dig in and be more hands-on, this is just a suggestion of a good way to get started. And it's just a 90-day sprint. So, you know, 3 Bigger Pockets podcasts a week. They're about an hour long. There's 450 of them available. They're all online. If you Google them, they're all free. Try to listen to 3 a week and just start learning. Calling, you know, 5 different realtors to talk about your goals. There's 5 in this room right now. So that's easy. Have that conversation, because the more people that you talk to about what you're trying to do, the more deals and things, and you build momentum, starts happening.
Nice about working with Ryan's team. He's got, I don't know how many people on the team now, a bunch of people out looking at houses all the time, and they're putting their feelers out there. So you have a big network of people who can bring deals your way.
Mm-hmm. Call and get pre-qualified. We can help if you have a bank, you know, call them. But if you want to be pre-approved, we're happy to help. You don't think you have the credit for it, you don't think you have the income for it. That's all conversations we can have privately as lenders. Tell you what you need to fix, how much you need to save, what you need to do. Analyze 10 properties a week. I mean, the analyzer that I've given you only has 3 variables. You can do 10 properties in an hour, but it's good practice. It's just a good thing to do and learn. And set a goal to make 1 offer in 90 days. It's reasonable. It sounds like a lot, but if you do these things, you'll be ready to make an offer. You know, find an accountability partner to do it with, or partner with on a deal. That's the key, is just do something.
I would say that probably the most important real estate investment transaction you're ever going to make is the first one. It doesn't matter how good it is or how bad it is. I mean, it kind of matters, right? It's good if it's good, and it sucks if it was a bad idea or a bad mistake, right? But the first one gets you ice broke, right? Got to get in the game. If you have no pieces on the board, you cannot play chess. Sometimes you just have to buy a couple of houses and look back and go, it was an okay deal, I guess. And then you buy another one and say, oh, it's a little better. Now I look for 4-bedroom houses, or I look for 3-bedroom houses I can turn into 4-bedroom houses. But nobody told me that. I've just figured that out over the course of a bunch of houses. Those are the ones I like. I have a very good friend that loves 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses. His strategy is different. The tenants that are in those houses, he feels are different. He thinks that, you know, a 4-bedroom house means there could be lots of kids and dogs that'll beat up your properties, but the rents are real good, right? So everybody's different in how they approach that. So I'd say the first deal is the most important one. Got to get in the game, where you're never going to know what it feels like to be on the field, right? So
when did you buy your first rental?
Yeah, I bought a first rental, 2019. I bought
2019.
a single unit in 2019, and then I bought a 12 unit in 2019. My first house I ever bought was for flip purposes, and it was November of 2017. Flipped a handful of houses before I ever held one. Bought my first one in 2019, and was went up to 44 units. I've sold a couple things, and I'm around 40 houses, units now.
4 years. Yeah.
From 19 to now, so yeah, a couple of years, but it can go that fast. There's Bigger Pockets episodes full of people who retired in 2 years, 5 years, 3 years. Started out with one deal, and 3 years later has $100 million worth of property. It's crazy. Some of these cats go after big, huge apartment complexes with other people's money. It's doable, and there's tons of ways to make money in real estate. And the fact is that this isn't a get rich quick scheme. I'm not selling a thing. There's nothing to sign up for afterwards, promise. But just like the multi-levels and the side jobs and the franchises and all the things you could get into to improve your financial lifestyle someday, real estate has a real different power to it because you get to use leverage and there's a physical asset sitting on a lot on the corner of that street and this street. And at the end of the day, property values can go up a little and down a little, but somebody's got to live somewhere. Everybody got to live somewhere. So for me, it's a vehicle I've chosen to be my main focus because of those reasons. Anyways, okay, questions about anything we've covered today? About strategy, go ahead.
Yeah, you spoke that your first house will flips. You kind of go over the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So flip house. So I did my first house with a partner. I had a good buddy. We talked about it a little bit. I thought, man, if you throw in a little bit of money, I'll throw in a little money. We'll hire somebody to fix it up. That'll be splitting the risk in half. It was a decent idea and it gave me the courage to do it.
Right.
I probably wouldn't have done it on my own, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of good about doing a partnership thing. You just partner on that one deal and you split the profit at the end. But we bought a little house in Seneca and I think it was like a $6,000 down payment. So each of us put in $3, not too bad. And learned a lot and about the contractors and learned a lot about putting houses back together. And I think we maybe profited around 11,000 by the time we were done because of some mistakes and because of some learning lessons or whatever. It took us about 12 months to sell that house or to get it done and then sell. We could have done some things differently, but we still ended up making a little bit of money on that. Flipped about a dozen houses and I don't prefer flipping now. I love the transformation. I love that I get to make the house beautiful. I love that as an investor, a neighborhood is better from having met me because I fixed the ugly house on the street, let's say. And so that part of it is really awesome for me. The artistic part of it, picking out let's put the barn door in the hallway and it's been great. At the end of the day, Joplin, Missouri is a little tough on margin. The reason for that is the house prices are so low compared to the rest of the country, but our material costs are similar to the rest of the country, even if it's maybe a little more expensive in Kansas City for those same materials, not by much. About $100,000 house and I put 50 grand into it, that's now worth 175,000. It's a lot of money for me to risk to then list with an agent, pay a commission, make 10 grand on. I could have done something else with my time. Okay. I don't work on them myself. And so that's where flipping can be real valuable. If you do a lot of the work yourself, you can make a lot more profit on them. Okay. So that became that. The second part of that for me, flipping was a never ending, it's just a job. It's another job. It's a job of fixing houses and selling them. And once I sell one, I have to have another one to make any more money. With the renting, for my purposes, I can build cash flow on a monthly basis and eventually have enough property to replace some portion of my income. It's a residual play, right? I do enough houses, I can have 5 grand a month, 10 grand a month, 25 grand a month in residual income and walk off the job, have a nice day, right? So I have a number, I'm trying to get to that number.
Sam, we got a question here.
Yeah.
It says, can you share your contractor with us newbies?
My contractor? Oh, okay. Hi newbies. So I've used a couple of different contractors. Most of those experiences were good. One or two wasn't amazing. And working backwards from my why and then figuring out the how, et cetera, I realized that waiting on good contractors to be available is a tough game. So if you buy one house a year or 2 houses a year and the guy you like to use says, well, I'm doing this other job, I can get back to you in about 6 weeks, that's okay. But if I sit for 6 weeks, I have 10 houses sitting for 6 weeks waiting for a contractor to come get me. So I just started hiring my own guys. And so that's how the construction company came to be. I now have guys on payroll, both W-2 and 1099, which takes you into work comp and general liability and all the things I never really wanted to do at all was own a business. That wasn't really my thing, but I realized to get to my why, that was going to be part of my journey. So I put up with that. Hopefully I can hire the bookkeepers and the managers eventually. That'll be my next step to grow and scale my business and not do the things I don't want to do and focus on the things I like doing. But hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I could talk some. I hire all contractors for our properties, and The frustrating part about it is the time. So I got one going right now, and I'm still 4 weeks out before my contract will start. So it's literally just sitting there. I paid cash, but if you would have financed it, you'd be paying interest. I'm paying insurance. I mean, these are holding costs. I'm paying taxes and things, and that is not generating any income, and there's nothing I can do. But that contractor I like, he's done a couple of things for me and has done a good job. I think to get a contractor, it's probably good to have 2 or 3 the first time you do one, walk through it and give you bids and quotes and get an idea of what it's going to cost to do that house. It's really time consuming to walk through and get 3 bids from 3 different contractors. But it's a good thing to do, but eventually you get one you like. It's nice when they mess up because then you get to see how they really are as a contractor. And those are the ones you want to keep. When they screw something up and they come back and they make it right, that's the guy I'll wait 6 weeks for to come out and do my house.
Your pro tip, when you're initially looking for contractors, start with the scope of work. Even if you pay a couple $100 to have somebody do it for you, then that becomes the piece of paper that all the contractors are bidding on. Because what happens is you walk a property with one contractor and they'll be like, yeah, we can do this, we can do this, we can refinish these floors and blah, blah, blah. The next contractor comes in, oh, it's way easier to just lay new floors over. Now you don't have apples to apples anymore. So you do the scope of work, you put a lockbox on the door, contractor says, yeah, I'll go put a bid on it. You say, great, the code to the lockbox is on. I'll send you the code to the lockbox. There's a scope of work on the kitchen counter in that house. Just put a number to it. You can have 3 or 4 people go out and bid that property based off the same information. What would it cost you to do this job? And then what would it cost you to do this job? Now you can apples to apples a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. I don't always take the cheapest one though. So I said, I'll wait 6 weeks and he costs a little more, but I know that if something goes wrong, there's trust there. So you don't necessarily want the cheapest bid either, but figure it out.
I got a question.
Huh?
So buying $25,000 homes, what do you look for in a $25,000 home to know it's going to be worth your investment? That can add up quick, right?
The one I just bought, 16,000. I got lucky on this one. The guy had already redone and upgraded all the plumbing and electrical, had all new windows and had a new roof. And it's like halfway in a renovation. They just got tired of doing it and quit and found another thing they wanted to buy, and 16,000 cash we closed in a week and that was it. And so that was a really good deal. They're not all like that. The first one that I did a BRRRR too, and I left $4,000 in that deal. There were some things wrong that we didn't expect. The inspector didn't catch. And this is the same thing. I bought that for 23,000, and I put about 40 in it. And I thought I got a bad appraisal on it, but
Happens.
it does. Yeah, it is what it is. And so there's some risk in it. The nice thing about BRRRR that I like is even though I screwed up, I only invested $4,000 in it. Total.
How much was it rent for?
It rents $650. Loans and payments $412. So
Makes a couple $100 a month. He'll eventually get his $4,000 back by just riding out the rents, right?
yeah, so it's not bad. But again, I'm fortunate because Sam has a great guy that is friends of mine, and he does a good job to give me that scope of work originally. So finding somebody that can do that is pretty valuable, unless you can do it.
And your guy's available for that?
Oh, you have to ask him. He works for me full time and he has some other things going, but basically it was just like a one-off deal. Skylar said, hey, can you come do a scope of work? And he said, sure, I could do it for $200. And so as his schedule allows, he likes money, so why not, right? Basically though, the BRRRR method is meant so that you can essentially recoup most, if not all, of your invested expense and still get a cash flow afterwards and build some wealth in that property at the same time. In his case, he'll have $4,000 in the deal. The next one he does, he might put an extra $8,000 in his pocket, and it ideally will balance itself out, which has happened to me too. Some are big hits and some of them are base hits, and that's okay. But ultimately they all go toward my end up cash flow number. So the reason a $25,000 house is something interesting is because the barrier to entry is just so low on those cheaper houses, right? I have a client in California buying a condo as a rental. He's putting $500,000 down so that the rents will cover the payment. Because his entire play is that he thinks that property, that $1 million property, but we were worth 1.3 in 2 or 3 years. So his is completely equity. Doesn't need the money, loves his job, doesn't need retirement, just has some extra cash and wants to put it in something that might appreciate. His strategy is different than his strategy. He wants to buy houses where his out of pocket, he can write a check for cash, 16 grand, 20 grand.
Yeah, I can't do that at 80 grand. I wish I could.
Yeah.
But maybe, I do a few more of these, I might be able to. But
So everybody will self-identify their strategies. Anybody thinking turnkey already? Like, I want to buy a new construction house and just not mess with it? No? Okay. I got a couple of them. They're great, man. I bought a couple of Sugar Mitchell cottages, rent them for $1,200 a month. My payment's around $6. Under warranty, I pay somebody to mess with that and get the tenants. Great deals. Especially when the interest rates are kind of low. Right now, they're still very good. They're creeping a little bit, but still very good. And you can do it on a 30-year fixed. So it gives you really good terms, payment $600, house rents for $1,200. Put the first one on a 2-year lease. Those people make 150 grand a year. They just weren't ready to buy right now. They're not bad tenants. They'll never be able to buy a house people. They just didn't want to buy because they have plans to move in a few years and they're not sure when. They signed right up, have not heard a peep from them. The house is in great shape. They pay every month. It's great. So not a bad way to go.
Can you talk about tenants a little bit? I mean, is that responsibility for the property manager? How does that work on the finding?
Yeah, so when you hire a property manager to find tenants for you, they do all of it. They advertise, they show the property. Some of them show it remotely, some of them show it in person. There's technology that helps with self-tours and some other things. But anyways, they'll find you the tenant. It depends on the company you're doing your business with. There's property managers that will take half of your first month's rent as the lease-up fee to go show the property 3 or 4 times, to find you that tenant, to get them leased up and get them moved in and everything. You don't have nothing. They're going to take half the first month's rent, or they're going to take a flat fee of some number of dollars to rent them the house in the first place, and then they get a percentage of rent from that going onward. As a true property manager will actually receive the rents directly to them. The lease is between the tenant and the property management company. In most cases, my tenants don't even know I exist or who I am, what my name is, what I look like, right? This property management company signs them up. They have a lease with Keller Leasing or with ProX Properties or with, I can't remember the other one. But anyways, there's a couple companies around that do that. Their leases with Keller, I could drive by and wave at them. They would never know. And I don't see my tenants in the grocery store because I don't know them either. Right? So it's different. Everybody's motivations are different, but it costs me money to do that. So my cash flow is pinched a little bit because of that. So I have to analyze deals, including property management, if I'm going to use a manager for those properties.
So you have a contract with the property management company.
Yes, I contract with a property management company for like a year at a time. They'll say, okay,
Gotcha.
we've entered an agreement that they're going to lease the property, they're going to manage the property, they're going to make decisions about,
Percentages.
and they get a percentage of the rate, of the rents, they get a percentage of the rents, and then I have a contract with them. So once a year, they probably have like an auto reminder. They send me another one, say, do you want us to keep going? Sign it, send it back. And then a tenant will sign a lease with that property management company. It can be really, it's just a great way to do it, especially starting out, because tenant screening is a big deal. The difference in whether or not you have good properties that stay good is who you put in your houses. So tenant screening is a big deal. If you don't feel suited for that, that's not really where you want to be at. Sometimes just signing up for property management and learning to analyze your deals, including property management, is a really great way to be more passive.
So I do it myself, and there's all kinds of softwares. Probably one of the best ones. It's kind of expensive, but there's a program called Buildium you can subscribe to. It's nice because if you build out your whole Buildium page, it has links. You can share the property immediately on Facebook and Instagram and all that with the click of a button. It has built-in background checks and credit reporting. So it sends a request to the tenant pays Buildium directly, and then it automatically sends you a copy of the credit report. The way that I do it, my advantage in this is that I'm a mortgage lender. So I don't know anything about construction, but I do know finance really well. And so my tenants, I do their screenings, but I underwrite them the same way I underwrite a mortgage loan. I figure if they can be qualified for a conventional mortgage loan in a bank, then they're probably good to rent from me. The other advantage that I do with my tenants is a lot of them are younger families that want to become homeowners. So we have a program, the credit action plan is something we do for our clients. So bad credit, we have some software on the lending side, we can figure out how to fix that credit. Give you an action plan of how to make your credit go from a 520 to a 720, maybe over a year. So what I do with my tenants is I build that out for them. I put them on a 12-month credit action plan, and we have an agreement that if they buy and I finance them before that lease is up, I'll waive their lease fees for them. And so my goal is to use my houses to turn people into homeowners and get them into homeownership. That's how I approach it. Homeownership and owning rental properties is a way to change your life. And so I try and use all my properties as a way. And I get some business off of it. The money I make as a lender makes up for the loss of rents that I have by having to turn that property. But at the same time, all of my tenants are highly motivated to pay because they want to become homeowners and they're going through the plan that I put them on. So they see value there. So totally different strategy. So what's cool is you talk to investors, you start learning just all kinds of strategies about how people do it. Everybody does it a little bit differently.
The one thing I was going to say, I was going to talk about property management, what you do. And one thing too is, if there's properties that enter the MLS a lot too that are currently rented. And so sometimes those leases will come up, like you can take ownership and like say that person has a lease for the next 3 months. Now, when that comes up, what's cool is Seth and our team does all of our property management. He'll let that owner know, hey, if you buy this, yeah, it's currently at this rent, but actually when that lease is up, we can probably bump it to this. And so that can also help you analyze like cash flow and those things too, which is pretty cool. So what were you guys saying?
We just had a question on Zoom. What was the tenant screening software? What was that called?
There's a whole bunch. Buildium is probably the best one.
Buildium?
Yeah, Buildium, like condominium, Buildium.
Okay.
It's a little expensive and it has a lot of stuff. It can do a lot of things, but it's probably the biggest all-encompassing one that I've seen.
We do some self-management. My project manager comes from a background of property management. The stuff that we source out to other property management companies is stuff that's not right here in our local market in Joplin area. So I got some stuff in Kansas. We don't drive to Kansas to manage those properties, so I use a different company for that. We use a software called Rent Ready. So it's similar. You buy the digital lockbox, and so whenever we have a house come online, we go put a lockbox on it, and somebody applies over the internet. I want to look at the house. They put in the basic information. We send them a code, and they go over there, push buttons. They walk in. They see the house themselves. They come back, they put it back in the lockbox. It notifies us they've come and gone. And if they like it, they fill out the rest of the application and we either approve it, sign a lease, or we reject it and move on. So we don't necessarily have to show our properties in person. If you're planning to self-manage, it might be something to look into. So it's either, I don't know about Buildium, but either something like that or Rent Ready that has the ability to self-show or self-tour is kind of an interesting technology that's come out the last few years that people are taking advantage of. What else?
Another question on Zoom. They're asking, what insurance company do you use for empty houses?
So there's a lot of ways you can go about this. Pursuing the cheapest, pursuing the easiest, pursuing the best services, all those things. I have a very long-standing relationship with Craft Insurance. I'm friends with Shelly and Randy, and they make it extremely easy for me. I bought 10 houses this year so far, and we put a contract on a house, and I literally just send the contract to her, and she says, okay, it'll be this much. When's your closing date? And then that's it. Later on, once I get the property rented and we go down the road a ways, I may come back and package up 3 or 4 houses at a time, and maybe then seek out insurance that might be easier or cheaper or some benefit to me that might not be from Craft, but Craft touches a lot of different insurance companies, so she can also quote from different places and get me a better deal. And they've done a very good job for us personally, and also with my business.
They're investor friendly. We do this class there too.
Yep.
So craft insurance is good. One thing to consider, insurance on rentals is usually cheaper because you don't have contents. You're just a dwelling policy. You're insuring the walls, that's it. Whereas your home, you have the home plus contents. So generally the rates are a little bit less.
Yeah, you'll pay less for rentals than you will for.
So it's a renters, call
It's called a dwelling.
Horror stories of people like putting cement down pipes and stuff.
It can happen, yeah, for sure. I mean, we used to do our own foreclosures at people's bank, and I can tell you
This goes back to,
100 things.
there's no way of foolproof save yourself from a bad situation. It'll happen. I've lost money on houses. Not very often, but I have. Or had to put more money in because my construction went over and I did something stupid or whatever. I've learned the hard way. I'll tell you what else is expensive is going fast. So because I bought too many houses at once, but I couldn't get them renovated fast enough, I've got payments coming out on houses that are just sitting there because my crews could only go so quickly. Finding the balance of how fast to spend that money or how many houses to buy out or have them waiting in the wings. If I don't buy enough houses, those guys don't have anything to do when they finish this house, right? So there's things that you learn, again, from different strategies that you'll learn different lessons than I will. The safest, easiest, sort of most vanilla way to start is to buy a turnkey, turn it over to a property manager and just see how it feels.
But did you do that because you were motivated?
Yes. So my wife doesn't have anything to do with any of my rental BRRRR renovation houses. She doesn't want anything to do with it. She barely wants to talk to me about it. But we run a very large team for lending and things. And so occasionally we have money that we don't necessarily want to put all towards stocks and bonds. We might want to diversify. So in her case, she's very familiar with Schuber Mitchell, the builder. And I know Ryan, of course, does a lot of stuff with them as well. And so she likes them and likes their quality of work. And we know what we can rent those houses for. So for her, the farthest she'll go into any of these strategies is, if I ever hear from a tenant on my phone, we're done, she says. She doesn't want to be in that position. So she'll do the turnkey stuff as long as somebody else manages it. And that's the end of it, right? As soon as that house starts to cost us money, she'll probably make me sell it and buy another brand new house, because there is some benefit to having a warranty. Everything's new. That roof is going to last for 15 years at least, unless a storm. Hot water heaters don't come up very often if they're brand new, that sort of thing. So what else? Does anyone from the Flanagan team want to add in, jump in?
Yeah. Brian, you had asked a question too about leasing in this area, like how popular it is as far as renters. The rental market here is very, very popular. There are a lot of people looking for rentals here. A lot of people moving in for jobs, need somewhere in between to go. So rental market is very hot here.
It's an extremely unique market.
Yeah.
I've actually looked at different markets because I'm familiar with some. Brand new house in Tulsa, say 1,600 square foot, is going to cost almost $200,000 to build, right? But that house will rent for around $1,200. In Joplin, a 1,600 square foot house might cost $180,000 to build. But you can dang near rent that out for $1,500 or $1,600. Now that's going to be on the high end of rents, but just giving you an example, Tulsa is just down the road. But the disparity or the variance between rents and house payments are extremely unique here. Buying a $100,000 house and renting it out for $1,000 a month means you cash flow day one. You cannot do that in Washington, California, Oregon, Idaho. You can't hardly do it in Tulsa. Depends on if you get outside of town some. You can't do it in Kansas City. You can't do it in St. Louis. You got to put big money down or do something to the property or find a needle in a haystack. But right now we could go on the MLS and pick out a house, and I can tell you what it would rent for. I can tell you what your payment would be. And I can tell you what your cash flow would be on that house without any effort on your part, other than maybe spruce it up, have it cleaned up, and have somebody rent it out for you. That's your main headache, or your main investment of time would just be the initial sort of wipe down. That doesn't happen in most markets. That's why Joplin is a gold mine in that regard.
That's where the analyzer there is best. It's a nice turnkey house where they know the rents. You can just type it in, press enter, it's all accurate. It's a good deal.
Yeah, cash flowing here is really easily. You can easily cash flow a lot of properties and in certain price ranges, of course, but
Sure.
it's very easy to do. A lot of people from the coast and other areas invest in Joplin because it's easy to do so. But what's nice about all of you is you live in Joplin, you know the areas and those kind of things. So it is an easy market to enter as far as that goes.
Yeah. But if you don't have money, there's a lot of people on the coast that might be interested in a partner, boots on the ground here.
Sure. Yeah. And we
So-
have people ask for that sometimes too.
You could partner into that first deal.
Anyone else, online or otherwise?
Any other thoughts on market outlook?
So, I mean, appreciate everybody for coming. This is kind of a series one. These guys are fantastic. We're gonna have them back again. We'll put together kind of an investor 2.0. Maybe you guys will have some of those deals working at this point. Just want you to know that everybody on our team is fairly knowledgeable about what's going on. So if you have any other questions that you want to discuss privately, we're happy to kind of dive into those. So.
Yeah, we just want to be a resource for you guys. So, I mean, obviously we do work in this business and that's how we make a living, but also we truly want people to build wealth and make Joplin a better community and really want to be a resource for you. So hopefully if you have questions, there's their cards, my cards there. Call us, text us. We really want to help people build wealth or find your why or, why you want to invest in real estate. So
And
that's
while we are mortgage lenders, it's not imperative that you use us to do a mortgage loan. There's something bigger here than just us getting a loan. The fact is that if all of you buy a house and fix up a house in Joplin, there's that many more houses that have been needing a facelift for a long time. And our city just gets better. Our communities get better. Like I said before, one of the things that really is important to me is that intrinsically, a neighborhood is better for having met me if I do what I do to a house. Take a lot of pride in making it nice and doing a good job. This is one of the other reasons I don't flip, because I can't help myself but spend the money to do it the right way. And sometimes you just can't turn as much of a profit if you take the extra time and care. But if all of you treated this as an investment for yourself, it's also mutually beneficial for Joplin and our community. To be a good landlord, to treat tenants with respect. Just because they don't own homes doesn't mean they don't deserve the same respect as anyone who does own a home. Joplin has a need for good landlords. Joplin has a need for good tenants. Good landlords make good tenants. So anything and everything that you decide you might pursue, if I can help you along the way, whether it means us doing business as a loan officer or just visiting and asking questions, I'm happy to help, because there's a lot more value in it than just me doing a loan or you buying a house. There's a lot of other things that happen when somebody buys a house and fixes one up, and people get work and jobs get happening and all of those things. So thanks for giving us your time today.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and we'll hang around for a minute if you guys have any questions, and hope this has been helpful. So if you guys have a good Sunday. It's nice weather outside today. So thanks again. Appreciate everybody for coming.
Thank you.